Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of Intercultural Insiders. My name is John McGraw, and I help newcomers and expats connect across cultures to succeed faster and with less pain. I am the founder of Hyaku Coaching, which is dedicated to helping you create your pathway to success in a new culture. The purpose of Intercultural Insiders is to share the stories of people with intercultural experiences. So if you're feeling isolated or lost, you can hear something from the guests' experiences that could help you, even if it's just a reminder that you're not alone. So today is going to be part two of the interview with Yauhan Mehta, which I got a lot of great feedback on from part one. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about an experience that I had recently, actually just yesterday. I had a fantastic session that I ran on cultural adaptation to Canada for the founders in the bridging program with the Toronto Business Development Center. And this is a business incubator program that's helping newcomers to establish their businesses in Canada. The participants are referred to as founders because, of course, they are the founders of businesses. And usually they have successful businesses in their home countries, and they're bringing them over here into Canada and to join and to add to the diversity, not only in the representation, but in the business side. So it's really a program that I'm very interested in and really like to work with them to help give what I can to help these founders get onto the right footing in their this next chapter in their lives in Canada. And it's great because they had a lot of great questions for me about Canadian culture and how it might be different from, say, American culture. And of course, I did in the session talk about some general truths and generalizations to follow along. But one thing I really want to emphasize when working with other cultures and communicating across cultures is that general cultural information, understanding the dimensions and what the tendencies are in different cultures is, of course, very important and very helpful. But there's a danger to avoid, which is falling into stereotyping. The most important skill to develop is your awareness, to watch and listen without judgment and be able to take in what you see. And you use the information that you have about different cultures, of course, to inform your observations, but it's not to replace that. You can't make assumptions that, for example, that's because someone is from America or they're American culture. That means they're very direct. They're because of course that's stereotyping, just as that a Canadian's always going to be polite, for example. The importance is yes, you can expect some tendencies towards these things, but you want to and observe the people that you're interacting with and adjust to what they do. Don't use that information about other cultures as shortcuts to replace to so that you can just shut off your brain, for example, and just go on to autopilot and just you assume, okay, someone is from they're from Iran or they're from India or Pakistan or from China, so that means they'll be this, and this. Always go with your observations, and your awareness of cultures can, of course, inform what conclusions that you come to, but do pay attention. If there's one thing you're going to learn about adapting to other cultures or any situation, it's really pay attention, spend more time listening than talking if you can, and take it in and learn from that. So, just something to emphasize there. And that, of course, leads me to a couple of other quick announcements before we get into the interview. As I mentioned last week and previously, the course enrollment has opened up for my live cohort course. about for newcomers, building your thriving career in Canada. And that course is starting on March 20th. It's a 3-session intensive course. You can find more information by following the QR code right here to get more information about that. But also, another important thing to mention is the free workshop that is coming up, which is about how to start networking in Canada, which again can be a real challenge for newcomers because it's essential to network in Canada to advance your career. But if you're new to Canada, starting can feel impossible. So you may have questions about who do I connect with? What do I say? What if I make a bad impression? And in this free workshop, you will discover the why behind networking in Canada, craft your message to start connecting online through LinkedIn, and practice your approach to start conversations with potential connections. This workshop, and you can find the details right here on the QR code. This will take place on Thursday, March 9th at 6:30 p.m., and it is free. So this is an opportunity for you to learn different ways to start networking. If you find that it's really challenging, you're scared about connecting with other people online because you're not sure about what to say, or maybe you are connecting with people, but to start that actual live conversation is a real challenge for you. I really encourage you to take a look at this link. It takes you to the Eventbrite page. And I know that many people have already signed up through LinkedIn, but just a reminder, if you have signed up here on LinkedIn, it's not a LinkedIn Live event. So to actually attend the event, you need to go to the Eventbrite page, the link is at the event page on LinkedIn, or you can just follow this QR code to follow that and register for that, because spaces are limited and it would be a real shame if you miss your chance to attend simply because you hadn't signed up through Eventbrite. So with all of that said, of course, we want to get on to the main part of today's episode, which is part 2 of the interview with Yauhan, which, as a reminder for those of you who may not have watched last time, he is an HR and change management professional and career coach who currently works at Deloitte Canada. He's previously worked for Walmart, Accenture, RBC, and the University of Toronto. And he is an industrial organizational psychologist with expertise in strategic HR, organizational development, talent management, change management, and business transformation. So he's very accomplished. And in today's episode, he talks about his need for serving people and where that developed, where that came from. He also takes a turn playing the interviewer and asks me questions about my motivations, why I started Hyaku coaching, what's my interest in culture, and some cases where I was able to help others. And then Yauhan goes back and talks about his plans for 2023, which are quite exciting. And the interview is pre-recorded, but Yauhan is live in the chat, as we can see. He's already commenting there as well. Conversations are already going, which is exciting. So throughout this episode and as the interview is going on, please feel free to comment, ask questions. You don't have to wait until the recording's done. Let's make this a lively conversation. That's one of the things I really like about these episodes of Intercultural Insiders. So without further ado, let's get into that interview, part 2 with Yauhan. Thinking a little bit more about your experiences, we'll jump back into the path that you took to becoming a career coach. What was it that motivated you to focus on developing your own practice?
Informally, over the years, I've had that genuine interest in just helping people, not just from a career perspective, just outside of the career space with regards to problems people were having with relationships, with things at home, with things in school. So that need for serving, for helping has always been a passion of mine. In terms of career coaching, when I was doing my undergrad at UFT, I did an internship in the career center. And that was my first exposure to really understanding and helping students with their career. I did the same thing when I was pursuing my master's. I was part of the career services over there as well. But then that got pushed away to the back burner because I started doing a lot of consulting work and it wasn't career focused. Now, when the pandemic hit March 2020, this is where I started receiving a lot of messages on LinkedIn saying, Yauhan, we want to get into Deloitte or we've been laid off. So that again ignited that spark of mine around serving and helping. And that's where my formal journey into career coaching began, where I started giving them guidance, mentorship in terms of what's the best way for you to get back to working again, or what's the best next step for you, or what's the best way for you to get an interview because you've now submitted so many applications, but you're not hearing back or nothing's really working out for you. Or maybe for some people, it was getting interviews, but just not having strong communication skills, that confidence, that self-belief to be able to crack that interview and convert that into a job offer. And then for some people, it was just accepting whatever came their way without truly negotiating their worth. So it started off more as casual conversation mentorships. And then people were like, Yauhan, you really do this well. Look at this as potential career option.
The pandemic, of course, is a terrible event, but the silver lining with that, I think, gave a lot of people the opportunity to reflect where they may not have because they were just in that routine. And so that disruption of that routine, I think, opened a new way to do things and find a new path for yourself, getting that opportunity. And for me, as an ESL teacher and being laid off and considering what I had seen from my own clients at the time and a better way to help them beyond language skills. It really was something that had an impact on a lot of us, myself included.
That's an interesting point because I felt that was really the year when people started doing so much self-reflection in terms of who they are and what is it that they truly want to do in the future. And you heard about the Great Resignation that happened shortly thereafter in 2021, where people were okay with leaving comfortable jobs to truly pursue their passion and even sacrificing finances to be able to truly do what is it that they're meant to do and finding something that is purposeful to them, something that's fulfilling to them. So you're absolutely right. It was a double-edged sword where a lot of people who got laid off also decided, no, I don't want to go back to working for somebody else full time. I want to do something that I've always wanted to do. Thank you for sharing that, John.
What else is there that you would like to bring up or discuss? Because I've been asking all the questions.
If you wouldn't mind, I would like to spend a few minutes just asking you about yourself and what is it that you do. If you want to maybe tell folks with Hiyaku coaching, because when I connected with you, it was so fascinating to read your profile, to see some of your videos, because not a lot of people are focused on that aspect of intercultural coaching. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you got into this? What is it that you're focused on?
Well, sure. I was hoping to interview you more, but I'm quite happy to answer questions about myself. Sure. Go ahead.
So how did you get into this? How did you get into doing what you're doing?
For me, it was something that developed over time. I had started out as an English as a second language teacher in Japan. I spent several years there, came back to Canada and continued working here. And I found that language skills are extremely valuable and they open many doors, but they're not the only thing. I was realizing that some of the students that I had, once they were looking for work, were still running into problems, even though their language abilities were excellent. And even people who weren't my students, I heard through my wife, Liliana, who's very connected with immigrants and newcomers, were still running into issues. And many times they assumed it was their language abilities because, oh, I have an accent. I want to reduce or get rid of my accent, which is a ridiculous concept because everyone has an accent. But I think they wanted to sound more Canadian and that would open up more doors, for example, or that they might have some very minor linguistic difference when they speak. Maybe some minor grammar point creeps up once every while. And they thought, oh, well, that must be what's stopping me. And I think it was a reflection that there's more to it than that. Reflected on my own experiences when I was in Japan for several years. And that was my first experience really living and working outside of Canada. And through that and through my wife's experiences, it just felt there's got to be something more than just focusing on the language side of things. There's going to be something a little bit deeper than that. And as a result of the pandemic, I was laid off around March of 2020. And that gave me time to reflect on what it is that I wanted to do. I explored teaching business English on my own for a while, and that felt better because I was working for myself, but I wasn't really doing what I felt that I needed to do. And then through exploring coaching and intercultural training, I felt this is something that I think a lot of people don't really think about, because it's the idea, oh, okay, travel broadens the mind, right? You go somewhere and you'll pick up the culture, and we all understand the value of that, but it's not something that just happens through kind of osmosis. Like you're there and it just happens and you adjust. There has to be an intention behind it, just like there is anything else that you want to develop of value, and having that awareness of yourself. Because I had lived in Japan for several years, and yes, I did pick up things, but had I known then what I know now, I feel I would have been able to adjust more quickly and really maximized the value of the relationships and the opportunities that I had there. Because even though I was in Japan for several years, for the most part, I still had a Canadian mindset of things that made it more difficult for me. And I think now being more open-minded and that internal exploration really helped me to adjust more effectively and be more open. And of course, in Canada, there are so many people, particularly in Toronto, from so many different backgrounds. There's no shortage of opportunities to learn from people. And this is something that I want to help other people with who are coming to Canada and experiencing those difficulties beyond just finding a job, but just having that satisfaction in their lives and understanding those things that they may not really be aware of because it's not something that's really fully explored. And I think that life can become so much richer when you're more open to different experiences and different opportunities.
That's amazing in terms of what you do and the people you serve. And I think, the impact as well, because this kind of stuff really changes people's way of thinking, feelings, their behaviors, and it really has a transformative impact on their lives and their careers, their well-being. Do you want to give us maybe, and then you can ask me questions again if you'd like.
Sure.
One maybe recent example of somebody who you worked with where there were so many struggles for them or so many gaps that you guys identified, and then what specifically you did and what was the outcome of that coaching?
There's one client that I have particularly in mind. She is the president of a Japanese company that is expanding here in North America, bringing products from Japan to North America and to other parts of the world. There was the issue of connecting with the people with a different understanding and a different mentality. For example, what's considered when negotiating deals or working in the HR side, like what's the understanding of contracts for things like that. Obviously, there is the legal knowledge, which is not something I deal in, but there's the cultural aspect. For example, why is it that in Canada, we are so focused on contracts, whereas in other countries, there's a bit more flexibility and it's more about the spirit of things. And there were some challenges, and it was creating a difficulty in building relationships for this person. So working with them, I helped to build that awareness of, okay, here's the cultural lens that you're coming from your personal experiences and from what you grew up with. You're looking at things this way, but there's another way to look at it. It's quite natural when you are coming to a new culture to be a bit judgmental. Right? Anyone who's been exposed to another culture initially goes through that. Yeah. So it was helping to speed up that process because particularly in a business situation, a lot of this is very time dependent and crucial. So getting that understanding faster, then realizing, okay, it's not necessarily a negative thing. What are some similarities where you can work on to build relationships, and then get to the point eventually where, okay, the differences are not a negative. They're just different, and being able to weigh them both and just be aware of the similarities and differences and being able to leverage them to develop more effective relationships. And as a result, my client, she had a meeting recently where she was connecting Japanese manufacturers with distributors in the United States. And she arranged a meeting for them face to face because they were having a lot of difficulties communicating. They had different ideas of what was important. And it was going through email, and she arranged, okay, let's have a virtual meeting where she helped facilitate that. And from what she told me, was able to save the relationship where there was a lot of potential. And she felt that she was able to do that because of the work that we had been doing together. That was really exciting. And being able to know that kind of impact was there. And I was able to give some advice, but a lot of it was based on what was important to her and her understanding.
That is such a great example because it happens to the best of us where we come into new countries or new cultures or new workplaces with our predispositions, with our biases. And we think that's just the right way of doing things because that's what I've done in the past and it has given me the results or given me the success, or nobody's really challenged that. So I don't think I need to do anything too differently. But of course, we work with other human beings, and what may have worked with 5 people won't work with the next 5 people or in the next organization. Especially around cultures, those nuances are so diverse. It's not just the West is individualistic, the East is collectivist. Even within Canada, it's so multicultural, people from different backgrounds, ethnicities. So that's amazing. That's amazing that you were able to give that awareness to her, to help herself, and then help her to help her business and that relationship between the American and the Japanese stakeholder. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me about that. And I love what you said, that there is no single way. Frankly, when you have that adaptability and you learn to work with different cultures, and not only that, but also take on valuable lessons from other cultures, then that increases your value as an employee, and also on an organizational level has a huge impact because Canada in particular, we've got more newcomers. They are new clients, right? So being able to adapt to their expectations really increases the profitability, increases the adaptability for the organization. It's a win-win situation. Okay, so getting back to you, what are some other projects and things that you've got coming up that you'd like to talk about?
For me, it's continuing to do what I do and trying to serve as many people as possible. One of the things that I would focus on for 2023 is just opening up my help, my support to a broader range of people, because the fundamentals of coaching and career coaching remains the same, whether it's to a student or to an executive. So I'm trying to open it up to different levels, different audiences, and also different people in different functions. My background and expertise is HR, organization development, talent management, and change management. But I've also been able to effectively serve people across marketing, finance, accounting, IT. So I want to continue doing more of that and serving more people. I'm also looking at collaborative opportunities where, for example, you, John, you're the expert with regards to intercultural coaching, which I have some knowledge on, but by no means am I an expert and a coach on that. When I help someone and I feel that's a gap, then collaborating with someone like yourself, that once they get the job, really helping them sustain that job and advance in that job, making sure their soft skills and their intercultural awareness is top of mind for them. My wife, she's also an executive coach. So in fact, just before our call and our meeting, I was talking to her about partnering up together to also serve a bigger group of executives and leaders. She's focused on leadership development. So really helping leaders achieve their highest potential. And then, of course, leaders are able to gain their self-awareness about their strengths, their weaknesses. They can help the people under them. And so much of an organization's success is driven by good leaders. So it's pertinent for us to invest in their development. So that's another thing that I'm targeting at for this year as well.
Collaborations always excite me. I love hearing about them and the different opportunities they open up, and just being able to combine different skill sets to give greater value to clients is something wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention as we're coming close to our time here?
I would say a lot of people have goals for themselves, their families, their overall well-being. I would say before you write down 5 pages with your goals for the year, make sure you sit down and reflect on what is it that you truly want? And what is it that you truly have the time, the capacity, the potential to achieve? We all live very busy lives and things are always changing. Things are very uncertain. So I would say write down 2 or 3 SMART goals for yourselves in terms of what is it that you specifically want to achieve for yourself this year, whether that is switching careers, whether that is starting a new business, whether that is spending more time with families, friends, whether that is upskilling yourself, learning new skills, and then be true to yourself where you take action on your 2 or 3 goals and continuously monitor how you're progressing. Don't compare yourself with others. Every human being is different. Everybody's on a different journey. So if you see people progressing faster than you, that's perfectly fine. No need to have any negative emotions or feelings. Everybody's path is very different. As long as you learn each day, as long as you get to grow each day, that's what's most important, because that will, at the end of the day, give you that satisfaction and give you that fuel to keep progressing.
I love it. The only person you should be comparing yourself with is who you were in the past. And just to see how much you've grown and progressed. I would love to continue the conversation, whether it's on the show or whatever else in the future. So
thank you, John, for inviting me. And it's an honor to speak to you, to be able to impart some of my learnings, my journey with the audience. And I always like to keep the conversation two-sided. And this is why I wanted the audience, because you interview so many people. It's always good to get to know a little bit about the interviewer and their journey and what motivates them and the work they do. So thank you so much for sharing that so openly, and would love to continue to follow your work as well and everything that you do. And best wishes to you and Hiyako Coaching.
So, wonderful way to wrap up that interview, that conversation. I guess a dual interview of both Yauhan and of myself in this part. And as for those of you who were following through LinkedIn, you noticed again that I wasn't able to show the comments that people were writing, but it was a lively conversation that was going on in the comments both on LinkedIn here. So I wanted to just bring attention to some of the comments that people were making throughout. There was a lot of comments, such as from Prashasti Sharma. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It's inspiring to hear about the impact one person can make. Liliana also commenting, indeed, cultural adaptation is more than language skills. And yes, and Yauhan also responding to Prashasti. Yes, we often underestimate the impact we can make, even if it's just one person. And really, I think that's something that it's easy with, I think, being overwhelmed, especially now with social media and all of the news and information about what's going on out in the world. It can be wonderful, but on the other hand, sometimes that overwhelm can make us, if we allow it to overwhelm us, it can make us feel small and that we can't have much of an impact. But really, if we can just impact one other person with what we can do, then that's really amazing. So just wanted to mention that, and so many other comments to go through that I'd like to mention, but really enjoyed the conversation with Yauhan. And just to update you with what's going on in the future. Now, there is no episode next week. Next week is a week off from the show, but as of course I mentioned earlier, and throughout the show, there is the workshop going on next Thursday next week on March 9th. So just a reminder for that you can register for that. Again, a free workshop. And coming up on March 15th, in 2 weeks, is the interview, part 1 of a 2-part interview with Hitender Sachdeva, who's a banker and newcomer mentor. Actually, part 1, it says part 2 on the screen, but it's for part 1 of that interview. And he talks about his experiences with different cultures growing up in India, and his exposure to different cultures in India and the Middle East, the importance of respecting local culture in a new environment and his experiences integrating into Canadian life and his work in the financial sector and as a mentor. So, really looking forward to that, showing part one of that two-part interview with Hidender. So, thank you very much for joining in and for having a lively conversations in the chat. As always, I really enjoyed everything here. Thank you very much, Yauhan, for being a great guest and a great interviewer. So, in the meantime, everyone, keep navigating between cultures towards your goals. Thank you very much and have a great week.